When something is marked as tradition, sometimes that isn't the truth. Sometimes it's a narrative that's been created. And also it can form a mindset for people that what they want is a break from tradition. And it feels mentally more difficult and like there's something in the way. Whereas if we can reframe everything as neutral and be able to design what we want from a blank sheet of paper, then we'll be more confident in that, in our desires, in the outcomes that we want out of life and our ability to achieve them, rather than creating these blocks in our own mindset based on beliefs that others have imposed on us or narratives that exist within society, and being able to write our own story. Welcome to the YouTube channel for Catch. My name is Sam and I am the founder here at Catch. Unshakable confidence is the key to getting everything that you want out of life. So on this channel, we help you to build that unshakable confidence and become unstoppable. If you want to work with us in any way, such as coaching when that's open, or how to build your confidence at home, all that information is in the description box below, including a free to enter competition with prizes of up to £250. So check that out. So as we mentioned in the introduction, a little bit of a controversial topic perhaps, or title on There's No Such Thing as Tradition. But it's about this broader mindset of confident and unstoppable people where they challenge everything that's going on around them. And they also have self-awareness to understand what narratives are going on internally and be able to challenge those narratives and change them. Because a lot of those narratives are driven by fears, doubts, insecurities, perhaps difficulties that we've experienced in the past, and then they come back as anxious thoughts or intrusive thoughts, and we convince ourselves out of doing something or going for something that we want before we've even given it a chance. Or we might encounter one challenge and all of a sudden we give up because our internal monologue is telling us that it's difficult or unachievable for us, or we aren't good looking enough or smart enough, or whatever it might be as to why we can't have this thing that we want. But as well as that, we have all these external influences, people on social media telling us what we should want. And because of our need as a species to want to fit in and be liked by others, we might deny what we truly want because of these narratives from a culture, a religion, online, speaking to friends and family. And it's up to us to break out of that and create the mindset and the belief system and the identity of someone who can have exactly what it is that we want. So one thing that we often see is this concept of tradition. And in this video, we'll talk about the concept of a traditional relationship, what that means in modern narratives, some evidence to the contrary about where, a traditional relationship isn't as common or exactly what you would think it is. And then, what are some of the alternatives? So this may be relevant to you for, this concept of a traditional relationship may be holding you back, but you can apply the same process to challenge for other narratives that may exist within society or friendship group, culture, religion, etc., and come to your own conclusions. Okay, so let's take this example of a traditional relationship. Now, in Western societies, that traditional relationship has been defined in narratives as the man goes and earns the money and looks after things kind of outside of the home, and the woman in a straight relationship looks after things inside of the home, such as cooking, cleaning, and raising children. Now, when we look at history, this idea of a traditional relationship, and I say it in quotes because we're challenging it, is actually very infrequent. So if we look at before kind of 1900 sort of time, there was a lot of poverty, and then, a rich group of people who tended to be landowners, be handed down wealth, and were kind of high society. Now, most of the people who were working class or didn't have lots of money, women were always working in those instances anyway. So there was the man and the woman, and often children, working to earn money for the household. So that was not what we would now call a traditional relationship. And similarly, those in high society, The men were often the landowners, and so they wouldn't really work a job in a traditional sense. They would own land and make money off of that land or the buildings that they owned. And the women would run those households, but they weren't doing the cooking and cleaning and the child rearing themselves. Often these people had staff of tens or even hundreds of staff members, and the wife or the mother would be overseeing those staff. So they wouldn't be doing the heavy lifting themselves. They would have several nannies, several gardeners, several cooks, and they would often do other things in high society. So through parties, they were expected to be educated and be able to read and write and play multiple instruments, perhaps speak other languages, etc. So they weren't doing the hard work themselves, but they were effectively running a business of an amount of income coming in from their husband and managing hundreds of staff to run the house and to throw events and host people and socialize. So they were basically CEOs of a business. And the men didn't have a job in the traditional kind of wage sense that we talk about now. So when we look at history, this concept of a traditional relationship that is now idealized, I would say, in the West, in straight relationships, it only really came about after World War I and World War II. And during that time was a period of socialism, where the highest tax rate in the UK on income tax was over 80%, and on passive forms of income was up to 98%. And there was significant redistribution and the creation of the National Health Service, so free healthcare. And because of that, wages for people in the middle class and the working class went up significantly, which enabled the majority of families to have the wife or mother at home doing the cooking, cleaning and raising the children. So it created this very new dynamic. And now we're seeing wealth inequalities increase again. We're more in a capitalistic society than a socialistic one in most Western countries, although there's varying levels of redistribution. And the latest stats that I saw, but please correct me if I'm wrong, in the US is that 60% of two adult households, both the man and the woman, are working. So it's a dual income household. And of 40% of those, the woman is actually the primary breadwinner or earner. So we're back in a place where the majority of people are a dual income household, and there's increased wealth inequality again. So it's very difficult, or a lot more difficult, with house prices and wages where they are, to achieve this kind of traditional relationship. Plus we've had feminism and other things which have changed the circumstances. So even though we call it a traditional relationship, when you look at history, the formation of that traditional dynamic, or what's considered traditional, was in a very short period of time due to coming out of world wars, redistribution of wealth, etc. And now we're trending back towards what we had more in the 1800s and before. And that's before we even get into queer relationships or couples that decide not to have children or be in polyamorous relationships, all of which, again, break down these gendered roles of the man does X and the woman does Y. So again, why are we talking about this? Well, sometimes we see this discourse online where people are very attached to the idea of that traditional dynamic and what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman. And because it's so tied in with their identity, that they're very attached to it, or they believe that's how their life should look or should be, rather than living the life that they truly want. And perhaps that's the man staying at home and raising the children, or both partners working, or being more equal partners in terms of what's done around the house. And so people who break out of that have to feel like they're breaking societal norms. And for some, they like that. They like to be the rebel, and that helps them build their confidence. But for others, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to accept family members who are bought into the concept of a traditional relationship, especially if it's linked to a culture or to a religion. And therefore, they're hamstrung. They don't feel confident, and they don't live the life that they want, and that's such a shame. Whereas there's so much evidence for other ways of living, and we only have one life, as far as we know. And everyone should be able to be confident in the choices and what they want and be able to have the life that they want. Having such a tight definition of masculinity and femininity, and anyone that doesn't fit those boxes is sort of shamed by society in some way, which affects their confidence as well. So it links to so many limiting beliefs, limiting narratives, shame that's put onto people. And we have to be able to break free of that to become the most authentic, confident, unstoppable, fearless versions of ourselves. So when it comes to a traditional relationship or breaking another limiting belief, ask yourself, is that really true? Is this narrative that's being put on me really the truth of the situation if I look at the evidence? Is there any evidence of the contrary? What do I want? If I didn't have this pressure on me or this societal expectation, how would I live my life if I had a blank sheet? Get really clear on what it is that you want and try not to think about the potential challenge or embarrassment that you may get from friends, family, or culture, etc. If you didn't have those outside opinions, what would you want for yourself and what would you go after? Also ask yourself, where these narratives are being pushed onto you or they feel societal, who's benefiting from those narratives? Because there was a whole system that passed property and kept property with very rich families prior to 1900. And maybe this traditional relationship format kept people in certain boxes and kept wealth with certain individuals and meant that society operated in a certain way. So think about, is it really benefiting me to approach things in a certain way or have certain beliefs? Or is there another group who wants to push this onto me because it gives them a certain benefit? And we see this a lot in dating advice and confidence advice that's gendered. There's a lot of people saying, lower your standards, or you should want this type of man, this type of woman, this type of relationship. And at the end, they're selling something. Or it might be that they can't achieve the kind of relationship that they want, or they've been hurt in the past. And so these beliefs, the limiting beliefs and mindsets that they're putting onto others, are to justify actions that they've had in the past, or the fact they have not been successful, or because they want to sell something. So think about who's benefiting from this narrative that you feel like is ingrained in you or affecting your decisions in life. And that's, again, another way to deconstruct it. So take it upon yourself to build that self-awareness, understand where these beliefs are coming from, or it might be an internal fear, and find yourself evidence of the contrary, and then start to intentionally focus on that evidence. And the other thing to mention is social media also reinforces any beliefs that we have. So our brains already work in a way where if we believe something, it filters the information that affirms that belief and makes it seem bigger, and it removes any evidence to the contrary. So when we start to have a fear or a belief or a lack of belief in ourselves, we can naturally start to just digest information that confirms what we are, or our existing biases. And social media plays into that even further, because the algorithm picks up what you interact with and then shows you more of the same. So it can also start to shape our perceived reality as to, well, this is the only way that things work because it's the only information that I'm seeing with the limited kind of friends and family that I'm interacting with and the limited information I'm seeing online. But it's really up to each of us to challenge some of those limiting beliefs and find evidence to the contrary. So if we look at some of those gendered roles, there are people out there who say, well, women only want 6 foot, 6 figures, 6-pack abs. But there are people who are not meeting those requirements, who are getting married every single day. And if you walk outside, you'll see 10 couples who don't meet those requirements. So what are they doing differently? And find yourself evidence of the contrary and build that belief. And you can do that again as a woman. We're often told that we need to be feminine to attract a partner, or, not be too confident or brash. But there are stars in the public eye who are super confident and assertive, who, again, are in long-term relationships. So you can always find evidence of what it is that you truly want, and then you can deliberately build those beliefs. And we have several videos on this channel about how to build your beliefs, build your confidence. If there's any limiting beliefs or fear narratives or expectations in your culture or religion that you're struggling with, place those down below. We'll look at those and perhaps do dedicated videos on those and helping you challenge those beliefs. If there's anything that you've had to deconstruct, would love to hear more about your journey with that so that we can help others in the community. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting and subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.